small corner in the middle of the bustling beat.
やめようか。
あなた、大丈夫よ。
でも、
信用して。
Today was supposed to be the couple's 5th wedding anniversary. But things didn't go as planned. His wife, who was also a colleague at the same company, had to go on a business trip with the board of directors.
じゃあ、行こうか。
部長、約束通り。
明日の何時までだっけ
？11時までです。
ユミさん、じゃあ行こうか。
It was an undesirable situation, but he still tried to stay calm and positive. They worked at the same company. When they first joined, it felt like a blessing getting to chase dreams under the same roof, being able to share lunch breaks and walk home together. But slowly, the joy began to fade. Not because of each other, necessarily, but because the workplace didn't feel fair. He worked hard. He stayed late, took on extra projects, and even supported others when they struggled. But no matter how much he gave, he often felt invisible. His ideas were passed over in meetings, and more than once, the credit for his efforts seemed to land elsewhere. There was one promotion he had set his heart on, but when the announcement came, it was someone else's name. That someone was his wife. He didn't resent her. At least he tried not to. She was smart, driven, and undeniably capable. But he couldn't help but feel a little lost. Not because she succeeded, but because he felt like he was shrinking, no matter how hard he tried to grow. Still, he never stopped caring. Every morning, he brought her coffee. Every night she had to travel, he made sure to send a message telling her to sleep well. He thought about all the things they had promised each other, about building a future, having balance, being partners in every sense. But lately, it felt like they were moving at different speeds in different directions, and neither of them knew how to slow down long enough to find their way back. And now, here he was, holding a small wrapped box in one hand, a dinner reservation in his email inbox, and a silence around him that he wasn't sure how to fill. It's a story about how easily people can lose connection, not because they stop caring, but because they forget to pause and ask, are we still growing together, or just growing apart? He imagined himself handing her the gift with a smile, hearing her laugh, talking late into the night like before. But reality was different now. He walked over to his desk and opened his laptop. Emails, spreadsheets, reminders, work never stopped. And maybe that was the problem. In their lives, especially their professional ones, there was no room for slowing down. Promotions didn't wait for emotions. Deadlines didn't care about anniversaries. What hurt wasn't just the missed opportunity. It was the feeling that his efforts weren't being recognized. It wasn't just professional disappointment. It was personal erosion. Bit by bit, day by day. And yet, through it all, he stayed. He stayed because he believed in what he was doing. Because he thought that if he worked hard enough, kept his head down, and let his work speak for itself, it would eventually be heard. He stayed because he believed that his loyalty and integrity would be enough.
この部署に来てから一度も有給を取ってなかったので。これは認められないね。
And somewhere in that silence, he made a decision. Not one made in frustration or sadness or pride, but a decision rooted in clarity. If he wanted to be seen, heard, and valued at work, in life, and in love, he couldn't just keep waiting. Something had to change, and maybe it had to start with him. The truth was, the work environment he was in didn't reward fairness. It rewarded visibility. And even though he'd been giving his best, he had been playing by the rules of effort in a game that prioritized something else entirely. But here's the thing, that didn't make his efforts worthless. That didn't mean he had failed. It just meant he had to redefine success on his own terms. He also began to think about his relationship, not with judgment, but with curiosity. He and his wife had both been doing what they thought was right, working hard, moving forward. But in chasing individual growth, they had stopped nurturing the space between them, the space that held their togetherness. He couldn't fix that alone, but he could start showing up differently, more openly, more honestly. He didn't need to pretend everything was fine just to keep the peace. Real peace came from truth, and truth, when spoken with care, could build bridges, not walls. He wrote her a message, not long, not heavy. He didn't know how she would respond, but it didn't matter, because what he had found in the stillness of that morning was his own voice again, a quiet confidence, a deeper self-respect. And that was the beginning of healing, not just in his relationship with her, or with work, but with himself. 3 days later, she came home. There was no dramatic reunion, no big moment, just the quiet sound of the door unlocking, the soft shuffle of her suitcase across the floor, and two people who hadn't really seen each other in a while finally standing face to face. They sat down together without needing to fill the silence right away. And for once, they didn't rush past the discomfort. They let it be their honest, unpolished, real. He shared what had been on his mind. She listened, really listened. Then, quietly, she shared something too. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There were pauses, moments of hesitation, but there was something deeper beneath it all. A willingness, a shared desire not to win or defend or fix, but simply to understand. And that, in itself, was the beginning of repair. And slowly, their story began to change, not because someone else fixed it for them, but because they both chose to stop moving on autopilot and start moving with intention. In the end, this wasn't just a story about being overlooked at work or a marriage stretched by circumstance. It was a story about how easily people drift apart when life gets loud, when expectations rise, when communication fades. But more importantly, it's a reminder that even when things feel lost, healing is possible. And it often begins not with fixing everything all at once, but with something much smaller. A conversation, a pause, a walk, a moment of truth spoken with love. Because sometimes the most powerful way to be seen is to first choose to see yourself again